Hello, and welcome to the September 2024 edition of Wright Virtual Visits. I'm Anna Kaplan, Executive Director of Frank Lloyd Wright's Graycliff, coming to you live from Western New York, and I'll be your host today as we travel right outside of Washington, D.C. to the Pope-Leighey House. Let me start by thanking my colleague, Eric Rogers of the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy. Though we don't see Eric here on screen at the moment, know he is hard at work behind the scenes. Eric will be monitoring Facebook activity and will be attentive to any questions you might have as you're watching. So please, as always, add those questions or add your comments directly on the Facebook thread, and we will be sure to catch them during the Q&A portion of today's program. Also, I'd like to express huge gratitude to Forever Ready Productions for their continued in-kind support of our program. Today, we have Allison facilitating our show. We are able to continue this program because of Forever Ready's commitment. So let's pause now briefly to play a short video about their production firm. Thanks again to Allison and the entire Forever Ready team. Before I start, I just want to pause. We got an awesome Facebook comment. We have a group of high school seniors from the Lapeer County Education and Technology Center streaming us today. Thank you so much. We're really grateful to be in your classroom. Today we'll be hearing from James Wells, who's program assistant at Woodlawn and the Pope-Leighey House. And many thanks to his colleague, Elizabeth Reese, who was very helpful in the organization of today's episode and is behind the scenes today. The current location of this Usonian house, and James will be explaining the unique story today, is in a spot that does not have access to Wi-Fi and cell phone coverage is spotty. So the great thing about our program is the flexibility with technology, especially thanks to Forever Ready's assistance. And today, James will be utilizing still images as well as pre-recorded video. I have personally been to the Pope-Leighey house, and this is a treat today to have James with us. So without further ado, I'll pass it along to you, James.
Hi, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for tuning in. My name is James Wells. I'm the program assistant at Woodlawn and Pope-Leighey House in Alexandria, Virginia. And today we're going to be talking about one of Frank Lloyd Wright's smallest homes. At 1,200 square feet with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, the Pope-Leighey House is a great example of Wright's vision for modern living in the United States, which he called the Usonian style. Pope-Leighey's also played a pretty notable role in the historic preservation movement, and I think the story of this house and the people who lived in it are, a great example of why it's important to preserve places like this. So let's dig in. The story of the Pope-Leighey house starts with Lauren Pope, who is a journalist for the Washington Evening Star. He and his wife, Charlotte, owned a 1 1/3 acre plot of land in Falls Church, Virginia, where they planned on building a pretty traditional like Cape Cod style home. The Popes lived in Washington, D.C. and really wanted to get out of the city. They got as far as even commissioning a local architect to design their Cape Cod style home, but they never followed through with it, as we'll see. Loren had always felt like a little dissatisfied with the architecture that he saw in his everyday life. And he wrote that he wanted to live in a home that someone put a little imagination into, something that looked and felt different from the typical architecture of his time. In 1938, a friend of Loren's at the Washington Evening Star, seeing like a rebel streak in him, suggested that he look into the work of Frank Lloyd Wright. The same year, Time magazine featured Wright as a cover story, which I believe if it's not the next slide, it's the one after. There's Loren there, and that's Wright on the cover of Time. This Time magazine article highlighted Wright's Usonian style and mentioned the first Jacobs house, which was designed for another newspaper man in Madison, Wisconsin. This mention caught Loren's eye. In the article, Wright's Usonian style is billed as like a vision for a new American aesthetic, a new and more American way of building for the modern era. So intrigued, Loren went to the library to do some of his own research. And after browsing some of Wright's works and reading a copy of his autobiography, Loren was just completely enthralled by the architect's philosophy. He speaks about this time as something of like a spiritual awakening. He refers to Wright's autobiography as, quote, a holy writ, and refers to himself as an evangelical in his letters. He felt that he like needed a house designed by Wright and was convinced that Wright would listen to somebody who was just so dedicated to his ideas. For Loren and Charlotte, the thought of living in a picket-fenced Cape Cod was just out the window after that point. Loren writes a really passionate letter to Frank Lloyd Wright asking him to design a home. The letter's 6 pages long and really plays to Wright's ego, with Loren saying things like, there's certain things that a man wants during life and of life, material things and things of the spirit. And this writer has one fervent wish. It is for a house created by you. In his letter, Loren also described what he called the problem, which was a description of the land that they owned and their limited budget of just under $3,000 per year, which was a pretty healthy wage for a middle-income family in the United States in the late 1930s. The plot of land that the Popes owned was really densely wooded and had a very steep incline off the main road. Really not long after Loren sends this letter, Wright responds with just 2 lines. He says, "Of course, I'm ready to give you a house." And he tells Loren to expect a call from his assistant. The two begin a correspondence after this. Wright and Loren at this time agree to around a $5,500 budget, which is the same as the first Jacobs house. Wright then invites Loren to visit Taliesin in 1939, which I imagine must have felt like a pilgrimage to Loren Pope. There, the two work to design a home, basing it on the first Jacobs house. Wright refers to this as using the same grammar as the Jacobs home. Wright and Loren scale down the initial design to stay within Loren's budget, removing a planned workshop area and making the patio smaller. In late 1940, Wright's team, led by the student Gordon Chadwick, broke ground at Falls Church. So during construction, as the first Wright house in the Mid-Atlantic region, it attracted quite a bit of attention from visitors, and really people were kind of a constant presence, people that weren't working on the house. The carpenter Howard Rickert, who was hired to help assemble the home, remembers having to carry plans around under his arms because visitors would just come in and try to pick stuff up and take it with them to take home as a souvenir. We don't advise that you do that today. We have a gift shop. So the home was completed on Locust Street in Falls Church, Virginia in 1941. Loren later wrote that after all was said and done, the house came to around $7,000 or $8,000, which is almost $2,000 over budget. He had a hard time getting a loan to cover construction costs and ended up actually getting a loan from his employer, which was a little more common at the end of the Great Depression than it is today. That said, Lauren described living in the house as, quote, a soaring experience of living in a work of art. And he wrote passionately about this home and the virtues of modern architecture, really for the rest of his life. It was Lauren's determination to live his life in a different way that brought this home into existence. But Wright was kind of surprisingly really very, very ready to work with him. Lauren doesn't really fit Wright's typical client, who tended to be like wealthier people who were looking for luxury homes. So to answer why, Wright was so ready to work with him, we'll have to take a closer look at, Wright's Usonian vision. So as we mentioned, the Pope-Leighey house is one of Wright's smallest homes. I like to think of this house as really a proof of concept for Wright's Usonian ideas. In his book, The Natural House, he describes the home of moderate cost as a #1 issue for modern architects. So the Pope family's modest budget really gives Wright an opportunity to experiment and prove that his style works for middle-income families. And you can see in this video just how small and compact this house is. This house was meant to be affordable and really reproducible, a house that you could build over and over again, or variations of it at least. Wright's use of modern materials like plywood, concrete, and plate glass were really intended to cut down costs. This is all factory-made stuff. You can see these the bricks that are used to kind of support the cantilever that this home is built with, are industrially made bricks. This is a real change, in the modern era. Wright's affordable design, as we mentioned, ended up going over budget, but this was really common for modernist experiments in affordable housing. Again, this is Wright's way of proving that this style works for middle-class families. You can also really think of the Usonian style as a reaction to the work of other modern architects. Wright saw the international style that was gaining traction with his contemporaries as kind of impersonal and disconnected, since the style could be built anywhere on Earth. You could take international style buildings and build them in the tropics, build them in the desert. The style wouldn't then have to change. Wright wanted to create an architecture that was uniquely American, built for this American environment. And in fact, the style's name is his new modern word for American culture, Usonia or US-onia. So while this house has similar elements to international style homes like Philip Johnson's Glass House, or even like Mies van der Rohe's Farnsworth House with the kind of cantilever design, flat lines, Wright's use of organic materials like the bald cypress, that really nice reddish orange cypress that you see in the house, and the intentionality of building in the landscape. If maybe we could get an exterior shot on the screen. Him building into the landscape rather than on it or around it, make this house uniquely suited to its environment. You see the landscape kind of drops away from the house itself, which allows this kind of decompression when you get into the home. Yeah, and then we have that nice open space in the backyard. If we can maybe get a shot, if there's a close-up one of the clerestory windows, that row of windows there. Because even the design of the clerestory windows was meant to evoke an Americanism in a lot of ways. These symbols are really likely based off the aesthetic of Native American cultures, who deeply inspire Wright's work in this period. Wright used these symbols to situate this building as an American building and really try to distance it from, a strictly European past. In fact, only a year before Wright designed the Pope-Leighey house, he had begun to build his own home and studio in Scottsdale, Arizona, which was called Taliesin West. There he and his students had discovered several boulders that had petroglyphs, which were created by the Hohokam people, which were dating to around 1,000 years old, that I've read. Wright, who was looking to blend his own home with the landscape around it, had these stones actually relocated to Taliesin West campus, and they're still there today. Looking at these petroglyphs, you can see that Wright actually based a lot of the symbols that he uses later on in his career on them. especially things like the whirling arrow, which is the emblem of Taliesin West, the Taliesin Fellowship. And I think it's really likely that that's what inspired the design that you see on the Pope-Leighey house as well. So more than just an architectural vision, Wright saw Usonia as like a new way of organizing the United States, a way to use modern technology and inexpensive construction techniques to expand out of overcrowded cities and into the countryside. This is really what attracted Loren Pope to Wright's ideas, is the idea that, you can fulfill the American dream in a way that looks a little bit differently, that he can have his own plot of land. In his book, When Democracy Builds, Wright described his Usonian vision as a time when great architects develop buildings that are not just in harmony with what he called the greenery and the ground, but that were also functional for modern living and fit the unique needs of their residents. Wright probably saw the home that he built for Loren Pope as an expression of this idea. So the Pope family, they live at the home in Falls Church until 1947. With a growing family and Loren looking for a change in careers, they sold the home and moved to a pretty sizable farm in Northern Virginia. The Popes hoped to commission Wright for a second design, a larger home for this growing family. But unfortunately, Wright passed away before before the Popes were able to, make that request. They sell to the Leighey family, Robert and Marjorie Leighey. The Leighys were longtime fans of Frank Lloyd Wright, and around the same time that Loren Pope was writing that passionate 6-page letter, Robert Leighey was reading Frank Lloyd Wright's autobiography, and the couple actually hoped to commission their own, modern style home. A material shortage following the Second World War prompted the couple, however, to look for a home that was already built. In 1946, the Leighys came across a newspaper ad in the Washington Evening Star, which described the home as a Frank Lloyd Wright house of cypress, plate glass, and brick with radiant floor heat, 3 bedrooms, and mostly furnished for $17,000. That image you see there is Loren Pope actually returning to the home after it was moved. There you go. That's the radiant floor heating. So you'll see it's I believe a copper piping system that they would pump hot water through, which heats the concrete that the home sits on and actually keeps the home pretty warm. Now, the Leighys, they see this ad for Frank Lloyd Wright home and they reach out right away to schedule a viewing. Marjorie recalled that the realtor had received inquiries from hundreds of people who did not actually intend to buy the house, but just wanted to see it. It's kind of already a tourist attraction before it's even a house museum. The couple falls in love with this home and they make an offer at full price. Marjorie, and that's Marjorie Leighey right there sitting in the house. Marjorie had experienced a long-term illness during her youth, and she said that what sold her on this house was really that it blended so well with nature. She recalled that when she was sick, she used to lie in bed thinking, if only I could see a tree, and seeing that primary bedroom, seeing that master bedroom there, realized that she could see the surrounding landscape laying flat on the bed. She would write, "Who could ask for more?" When the Leighys, while the Leighys described having really kind of an adjustment period to living in such a small space, they found the simplicity of Wright's design liberating. Yeah, there we go. That is the window from the primary bedroom. Maybe it will pan around and show you the bed with that great view. Yeah. So Marjorie later wrote that minimizing their material possessions to fit this kind of small space, which was smaller than the home they had lived in before this, and the home's natural setting released a greater imaginative, intellectual, and creative process. It's just like Loren Pope said, like living in a work of art. Robert and Marjorie had no children, so they're able to use these spaces in different ways than the Popes had, and really in different ways from what Wright had intended. The child's bedroom became, Marjorie's creative space and also a storage area for their upright piano. When their nieces and nephews would come to visit, they would sleep on a cot in the sanctum, or what was originally Loren Pope's home office. So this is really how the Leighys are living in this house for about 15 years. In 1963, however, there's a pretty sharp turn of events. After living in the home for more than 15 years, Robert Leighey passed away. And very soon after his death, Marjorie Leighey received notice from the Virginia Department of Highways that her home was in the path of the planned Interstate 66 and was going to be destroyed to make room for that highway. Marjorie was shocked, but really determined to save her unique home. At first, Marjorie resisted by hiring a lawyer and refusing to receive her mail, fearing that she'd receive a condemnation notice. And once you officially receive a condemnation notice, then it's actionable. When members of the National Trust for Historic Preservation learned that the home was in danger, they petitioned the trust to help Marjorie preserve the house. And at the same time, Marjorie started to write letters to politicians and to news media. So she started a letter writing campaign, and she addressed one letter directly to the Secretary of the Interior, Stuart F. Udall. Stuart Udall was moved by Marjorie's letters and is quoted as saying, "Maybe we can keep this country beautiful after all," after reading her appeal to save her home. Because of this, Udall takes up what newspapers at the time referred to as living room diplomacy. He invites state and federal highway officials to Marjorie's home to actually sit in the living room of the house that they're going to destroy or plan to destroy, to find an alternative, to find a way to let Marjorie keep her house. Unfortunately, by this point, the highway department would not budge. The process was really too far along to change the route of Interstate 66. Udall and Marjorie were kind of resigned. So Udall proposes that he and Marjorie work together to find a suitable place to relocate the home. So the National Park Service, which falls under the Department of the Interior, and the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which still is today, a private nonprofit, worked with Marjorie to find a place to move her home. The National Park Service offered her a site at Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C., but Marjorie declined, saying, "You can't take park land from people in the middle of the city. They just need it too much." I don't know that I would have been as gracious as she was. The National Trust, on the other hand, proposed to move the house to the grounds of Woodlawn, which is a historic site near George Washington's Mount Vernon. Marjorie, who had been familiar with the site from past visits, felt really comfortable moving the house there. The site's landscape and the wooded, kind of really densely wooded grounds at that time closely resembled the Falls Church site. Stuart Udall brokered a deal between Marjorie and the National Trust. I imagine he was a little disappointed that National Parks didn't get the house, but he helps Marjorie anyway. So she signs over ownership of the home in exchange for lifetime tenancy. What she gets in exchange is that the trust will relocate the home to Woodlawn and maintain the house, operate it as a museum. In an interview with the Northern Virginia Sun in 1964, Marjorie says that she could have accepted cash from the state and let them have it, but the house was a thing of beauty and shouldn't be destroyed. She said that saving the home wasn't for herself, but for architects, students, and people building their own homes. This is the kind of house, she says, that people can live in rather than just exist in. So this image here, you'll see, I believe that's Stuart Udall on the left side and Marjorie Leighey in the center. To the right are two people who work with the National Trust, whose names escape me at the moment. So in 1964, with oversight from the original construction team, including Taliesin Architects and the National Park Service, the home was disassembled and driven to Woodlawn, where it was rebuilt. Marjorie lived in the house at Woodlawn until her passing in 1983. And today the house has two names, Pope for the people who commissioned the home and whose vision brought it into existence, and Leighey for the woman who saved this house for future generations to learn from and enjoy. The Pope-Leighey house has now been at Woodlawn for longer than it was at the Falls Church site. And as time has gone on, we've worked to preserve the home in a number of ways. What you see here is actually from the second time that this home was moved. After Marjorie's death in 1983, the trust performed a structural analysis to see how the building was holding up, and because there had been noticeable like cracks forming in the concrete slab that the home sits on, the concrete foundation. Trust architects realized that there had been a critical mistake in where the home was built, rebuilt rather. The foundation had been laid on top of what's called marine clay, which is waterlogged soil that just could not hold the weight of the home. So it had begun to buckle like this. So in 1995, the trust began efforts to relocate the home to a sturdier location, which is only 30 feet away from its second site. So where it is now is it's hopefully its final home. So if we're keeping track also, the initial cost for this home was around $7,000. The Leighey's paid $17,000 for it in 1947. And it cost about $700,000 to move the home in 1995, 96. That adds up to, I think, priceless, right? Just last year, Pope-Leighey's house roof was replaced in order to prevent water damage to the home. The new roof is made of a material called Kemper, which is a watertight compound similar to the original compound that Lloyd Wright indicated in the home's design. Between the 96 move and 2023, it had a kind of tar and gravel roof that was not holding water very well. Preservation efforts at Pope-Leighey are really ongoing in more ways than one. So as we work to preserve the physical building, we're also doing more research into the lives of the people that created and preserved this home, whether those are residents, architects, or people that just worked on the house. Currently, our staff is researching in more depth the life of Marjorie Leighey, and we plan to host an exhibit on her life and celebrate her work to save this home for future generations. Next year marks the 60th anniversary of the home being moved to Woodlawn. So as we move into the future, the stories of the people whose lives were touched by this home start to slip away from us. If you or someone you know has a story about time they spent at this site that was meaningful to them, I really encourage you to reach out with us and share it so that we can document it and preserve the meaning behind this home. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today and listening to me talk about the Pope-Leighey house. Woodlawn and Pope-Leighey are located just south of Alexandria, Virginia, and we're open for tours Thursday through Monday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Yeah, I see no questions so far, but I'm happy to.
Well, I definitely have some questions, James.
Cool.
So thank you so much for that. Because I've been there before, and this is a bit of a unique situation where, as you mentioned, it's a small house. And I was thinking about the spaces that we didn't see today. I know we didn't see the kitchen. Mm-hmm. Besides the kitchen and the bathrooms, what maybe did we not see today in your video?
Yeah, so there's also the small space. We also have what Wright referred to on the blueprints as the sanctum, which is a home office, which we might have seen a clip of that.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah.
But really, that's all the space there is. This house is, like we said, in the Usonian style. It's meant to be something that you can reproduce, that you can make a lot of copies of very quickly and very inexpensively. And later on, Wright would actually add what he called the Usonian automatic, which was houses that were intended to be expanded on, that you could put additions on. I find that people tend not to put additions on these homes because they're in love with Wright's design. Yeah. Well,
another thought I had, you mentioned the first Jacobs house, which is in Madison, Wisconsin. So I know it would have been a bit of a hike for them, but is there evidence that Lauren and Charlotte traveled to see that home in person before commissioning this?
That's a good question. Yeah, I believe that Lauren Pope did visit the Jacobs house while he was at Taliesin.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I also I was thinking about the children. So I know that the Leighys didn't have any children, but how many children did the Popes have?
So the Popes had 3 children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they lived in this home?
So unfortunately, it's kind of a little bit of a tragic story. The Popes actually lost their first child shortly after moving into this house. They have more children later on, though. Yeah, the child they lost, his name was Ned. They have Lauren Pope Jr. and then I believe a daughter after that. His name.
So they were living in this home with 2 children.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually, when I visited, I was there with my 2 children, and you know, I can understand why they might want to move to a farm. Although I have to say, what an incredible and unique childhood to grow up in these spaces. I was really impressed by how much thought was given to the children's spaces. And do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I don't know if we have a video of the child's bedroom, so we can.
I think we saw.
Yeah. But that is a space where, Wright places a lot of emphasis on like early childhood development. So you'll see here we're walking down this kind of skinny hallway. And then as we turn the corner, it's going to open up and what's called compression and then release. And so you'll see that right as soon as you come around this corner, you've got a play area. In this room, we've got Froebel blocks on display, which play a really Wright credits with, inspiring his architectural career. That room also, I don't think we have a video that shows this, but that room you can also see from the living room. You can actually see into those windows. So I think kind of a little bit of social engineering on Wright's part.
So while we're here, we did have a question about the furniture. So the way that the home is currently furnished, I'm curious, is the moment chosen in time from the Pope's time or the Leighys' time, or is it a mixture, and how much is original?
Sure. So actually, a lot of the furniture that you see in that house is original. There are 2 rows of seating in the living room that you can see right there as we come down. Those 2 rows of seats are reproductions, and we actually invite visitors to come and like take a seat. And I always ask people when I get to like settle in for a moment, take a look around. A big part of like how historians do their work is through like using your 5 senses. So when you come into this space, what do you see, and how might that relate to what people in the past saw? Other furniture that we have that's original would be all the tables and the chairs that you see that are around the dining room table, which we might pan to. So those chairs around the dining room table are original along with the tables. There were originally 6 tables and 12 chairs, and it was really intended to be moved around so you could adjust that space to how you want it. Other objects that we have on display are, we use the word period, so they're not original to the home, but they are from anywhere dating from the 1940s into the 1970s.
A couple other questions. Someone commented that the doorway and, maybe even that hallway, it feels pretty narrow. Do you know how wide it is, or if it is especially narrow compared to other Wright designed spaces?
Yeah, I don't know the exact measurement. It's a little bit wider than like my shoulder width, so maybe even pretty tight like this. Not a home that would pass like ADA compliance.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Also, can you talk about the closet space and storage space? I remember there's actually a lot of hidden storage. Is that accurate?
So you see in the bedrooms that there's really just one kind of practical closet space. In the kitchen space, we have a little bit of more practical areas. Coming down that stairway, there was a pantry and a coat closet. That's really all you get. There's really not much more than that. This is meant to be a modern home. You're living a modern lifestyle. And that means not just shedding a lot of the decoration that came with like previous styles of architecture, but shedding all your junk, your stuff that you don't need, that's not necessary to your everyday life. There's no attic in this house. There's no basement. And something I always ask people is, what's in your attic? What's in your basement? Typical answer is like stuff. Yeah. Wright is really trying to streamline a modern American home.
Well, James, thank you so much. But before we go, I know this is Wright Virtual Visits, so obviously we're focusing on Frank Lloyd Wright and the Pope-Leighey House. But when you visit Pope-Leighey, there's also the opportunity to visit Woodlawn too. Could you just take a few minutes and explain the relationship between Woodlawn and Pope-Leighey, and if there's an opportunity to tour both when people come to the property?
Yeah. So Woodlawn was built in 1805. It's got connections to the Washington family, and it's a really very interesting history. We have, over the last 2 years, been doing a lot of research into the lives of the people that worked and lived in. I'm in Woodlawn right now. Okay. That worked and lived here over the last 2 centuries. So when you come to visit, you can see this Frank Lloyd Wright house and get this feel for what a modern home looks like. But you can also really come here and see what it is that Frank Lloyd Wright is reacting to when you see a house like this. So we have a really unique opportunity to compare 2 visions for what the future of America looks like, and 2 visions for what it means to live especially in like Virginia.
Yeah. And how often do you run tours?
So we run tours from Thursday through Monday, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. On the hour. Our last tour is at 3 p.m. every day.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, James. This was really very informative. I appreciate everything you and your team did to make this possible today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
So before I go, I have to, of course, make a pitch for the in-person experience of this Wright site. I don't want to stress that enough. Wright Virtual Visits exists both as an educational tool and to build awareness around Wright's contributions to the history of architecture and design. And our hope is that you will get in a car or on a plane or on a train and actually visit and support these publicly accessible sites. So just a reminder that recordings of this and all past episodes are ready to view at savewright.org/WVV. And we have one final episode for the season, and it's scheduled for November 7th. And we will be visiting another site that we have not yet included in our programming, the Historic Park Inn Hotel in Mason City, Iowa. Really excited about this episode. So I hope to see you next month. Thank you for supporting our program, and we'll see you next time.